That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, first of all, appreciate you hopping back on here with me. The last time we talked, we did the offensive depth chart. So now I think it's only fair that we talk about Kane Wommack's defense entering year two. It's not Nick Saban's defense. It's got some nuanced differences, but there's also more similarities than I think a lot of people originally thought or acknowledged. There's also some differences. We're going to get into those. But first of all, what are your thoughts on how Alabama's defense performed for the first time in close to 2 decades without Nick Saban kind of being in charge?
I think in retrospect, it went exactly like we should have expected to a degree, which means there were growing pains. It wasn't a seamless transition, and we were sort of, I think anyone that expected that in retrospect was a little silly. They had done it one way for 17 years, and then so the DNA was sort of built into the fabric of it all, to say nothing of they had been recruited to play in Nick Saban's system, in the first place, and then they were changing the system. I think in retrospect, though, it went about as well as could be hoped, where the first 6 games or so was bumpy, including I hate saying this out loud every time I say it, but I believe it. I think that Vanderbilt game was probably as bad a game defensively as I've ever seen Alabama play ever. I mean, it was disgracefully bad, giving up 40 points to a team that only finished 500. I don't think Alabama's ever done that ever, giving up that many points to a 500 football team. So that was a low point, right? But then you look over the last 6 games, the last 6 or 7 games, they were playing as well as anyone in college football. They were literally almost without notice, Clint, developed into an elite defense over the past 6 or 7 games. I'm not sure who exactly finished number 1 in total defense, but I believe Alabama was sort of matching them week to week over the last 6 weeks. So once they learned it, once they got it down, once they had some confidence in it, it was good. And the numbers are the numbers. I think they gave up the fewest points and the fewest yards at Alabama since 2017, thanks in large part to how elite they were playing over the second half of the season. The challenge will be, hey, what you were at over the second half of last season, is that what you're going to be all year this time around? And if so, it can be an elite group, and Kane Wommack's really to be congratulated for seeing the transition through despite the early bumps, which were probably inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, I agree pretty much, with all of that. I will say 2020 Ole Miss,
Yep.
think they finished 5-5, if I'm not mistaken. And Alabama gave up 48 points to them in that 63-48 win. The difference is you don't remember those types of things as much when it's a win. So if Alabama's offense could have figured out a way to mask, all it took was holding Lane Kiffin to 1 field goal that season, and that's what created the separation that they needed to win that game. You win, people forget those types of performances. I mean, they wouldn't say they forget them, but when you can point back and say, it's everything you said. I don't think we've ever seen an Alabama defense give up that many points to a 500 football team. Ended up finishing 7-6, I guess, but at the time, 6-6 in the regular season.
6-6 regular season.
Yeah.
Right?
I
forgot that Ole Miss team was 5-5. Always think of Lane Kiffin's teams at Ole Miss as winning.
They were better than that too. And I would say Vanderbilt was better than that as well. They played some other teams extremely well. They had some rough performances, obviously. I
just remember point to Vandy only scored like 20 against Kentucky and only 17 against Auburn. The only team they scored more points against last year, other than Alabama, was Akron.
That's right.
So
great point.
But again, regardless of picking nits, obviously the story of Alabama's defense was bumpy transition early, including at least one pretty putrid performance, but bouncing back pretty spectacularly over the second half of the season.
Yeah, like the Oklahoma game, that's one of those where you look and you say, man, their inability to stop the quarterback run at times was extremely frustrating. Now, here's the thing, though. a pick six, another interception that was returned and put them Oklahoma in scoring position. So while they did, it was a frustrating game when you look at it through the lens of it felt like they really couldn't stop the running. Granted, there was some triple option elements that they adopted from Vanderbilt. They were
Vanderbilt.
very, very depleted as far as their wide receiver room. So they were trying to generate offense in whatever way that they could. And they had a game plan that I think caught Alabama off guard and implemented it really well. And they, Jackson Arnold's a much more mobile guy than a lot of people give him credit for. So, that's one of those where it's like, well, when you actually look at the points given up, it wasn't bad, but it was also one of those where you're like, man, it was their inability to really consistently slow down Oklahoma's run game. And that included some stuff they were doing. Like, it's not just the strain that the quarterback's legs put on you. It's, all the motion, the eye candy, those types of things that opens it up for the running backs as well. So it was like just their inability to stop the run in general, I would say, was a huge frustration point for Alabama fans, on top of the fact that, once again, you lost the game. Like, if you figure out a way to win that game, it's probably not viewed the same way. Frustrating. I think everybody remembers watching that Ole Miss game in 2020 and saying, man, that was a frustrating defensive performance. It was like they couldn't do anything. But you still say, but they won. So everything, ends up being okay. It's funny how that works. But that's a very, very good point. Now, in year two, before we get into the depth chart and start breaking it down position by position, where are you expecting Alabama to maybe make some improvements defensively?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it's an expectation so much as it is a hope, but the pass rush just has to improve. I mean, and I think it will. I really think it will improve. I think they were actually a little better than most know at generating pressures. I think they did a good job of getting to the quarterback, maybe forcing the quarterback to get rid of balls before they were ready, which is ideally what you're really trying to achieve in a pass rush, is getting the offense out of time and delivering the ball before they want to. I think they were pretty good at that. They just couldn't finish. I mean, LT Overton's the perfect embodiment of that, where his pressures and hurries are outstanding and a sack number, not that great. I think he is sort of, to me, almost the poster child for what this defense can become. So close a year ago, a half a step away from what amounts to a double-digit sack season. And I think he will improve that half step this year. I think that's a reasonable expectation. That's just one guy, but to me, he's emblematic of the whole thing. But that's where I'd start, Clint, with, like, where does this defense have to improve? I think it's putting quarterbacks on the ground and not just hurrying them. Continue to affect them, to use Nick Saban's word, but finish a little better. And if they just do that alone, I'm going to feel really, really good about saying this is very likely a top 10 defense nationally.
Yeah, I mean, I really do, especially in the early portions of the season. I fully expect Alabama to be kind of carried by its defense just as they break in a new quarterback. And I'm not saying they're going to struggle, and I'm not. I just think they've got some things to some kinks to work out offensively. Breaking in a new quarterback, you got a new offensive coordinator, and I'm sure it'll get figured out relatively quickly. But on defense, you got a lot of returning guys, a lot of your returning production, especially if Deontay Lawson is back and available for week one. Don't know to what capacity or if that will be the case, but especially if that ends up being the case, then yes. But, you got Kane Wommack coming back, pretty much the entire defensive staff outside of one guy. So I would fully expect that that side of the football to hit the ground running a little bit faster than maybe the offense. But I mean, when you talk about like Florida State in week one, it's going to be a tough test. So, maybe, I don't know, with Gus Malzahn and Tommy Castellanos and I mean, Jimmy, should we be expecting the defense? Because now I'm starting to, as I'm working my way through this, don't get me wrong, I think Florida State's defense is going to be a hostile environment. I probably would still lean, defense being a little bit ready out the gate than the offense. But with Florida State's offense and the way that that's probably going to look, I don't know. Maybe we see some growing pains on both sides.
The number one concern for me about the early season is the FSU game, just in this one sense. We already talked about it. You pointed out about the difficulty in stopping those quarterback runs in the Oklahoma game, and Oklahoma's sort of borrowing some things from Vanderbilt to have success. There's other games. I saw a tweet from you earlier this week that's so true about, other quarterbacks had good games on the ground too, including even South Florida's quarterback, rushed for 100 yards. We don't. So Alabama struggled defensively in dealing with the athletic quarterbacks last year, and now right out of the gate, you might face the toughest challenge you will all year in terms of that element of things. Maybe until you get to Vandy, would be similar. But the expertise of Gus Malzahn running that type offense with a quarterback that's sort of custom built for it, I think that's spells a little trouble for Alabama in the sense that this is what they struggled with a year ago. Now they've had all spring to work on it. They'll have all summer to work on it. No doubt it will be a huge point of emphasis. No question you'll see someone like a Jalen, Mbakwe playing scout team quarterback that week or something. I mean, just doing something to get the defense even more ready. But yeah, other than that opening game, which will be a test based on what we saw a year ago for this Alabama team, I do think the defense is what needs to carry the team until Ty Simpson is no longer a green quarterback. I don't think it'll take Ty long to get comfortable because of his age. Year 4 in the program, it's not like he hasn't played, but he's green. I think once he gets about 2, no more than 3 starts, though, under his belt, has all those weeks of first-team reps to a practice, I think Ty will be fine. But until Ty's fine, the defense needs to sort of win the games. That's a little concerning based on week 1 opponent and their style of play.
Yeah, and I know we're talking defense, but just to kind of hammer that point home, I liked the way Alabama was aggressive back in 2021 with Bryce against Miami in the opener. They kind of let him go to work. I mean, down there, close to your own goal line, you're letting him sling it. And I mean, he ends up throwing that long touchdown to Jameson Williams, really started to get his confidence going early. Granted, Bryce Young's, I mean, that's a different breed. So I'm not saying Ty Simpson, you need to be, ultra aggressive, but I wouldn't be surprised if they had some things dialed up. If he can get some early momentum. Now, it's a hostile environment, so it can turn against you quick. If you have something dialed up and it doesn't work and he throws an interception or something bad happens, I wouldn't say trick play or anything like that. I don't think really that's going to do it, but just doing something that's going to be able to get him going and get his confidence going early. If he can come out of that game having performed pretty well, I think it's really going to set the stage for, his season, and that can really rally the fan base behind him, even though, the unfortunate part is a team or a program like Florida State, I think they're going to be much more difficult of an opponent, especially given you're going there, the time of year, the time of day that the game's going to be happening. I actually brought up something as far as Alabama's gone on the road and played Texas. They've gone on the road and played USF. They went on the road and played Florida back in 2021. And all of those teams, all of them finished, I think, with 5 or more losses. And really all of those games were close, and Alabama struggled. So it's small sample size, but it's like, given all of that stuff, what's going to probably happen is if Alabama routes them and does what it needs to do, everybody's going to say that's a 2-10 football team. They're going to get very little credit for it. And, granted, they might get more credit for it later on, depending on how much improvement. Maybe that sends Florida State down another spiral, and they would have been a different team had that not happened. Right. You just don't know. But if they struggle, I still, I don't think Alabama is going to be given a lot of credit. They're either going to lose, which will hurt, or they'll win close, and people will say it's a 2-10 football team, or they completely drum them. And everybody's saying, this was a terrible Florida State team last year. But I think just bringing in a Gus Malzahn, just bringing in, a quarterback that fits his system, we're expecting a lot of improvement from Florida State. And I think that if Alabama can get the job done in any capacity down there in Tallahassee, it's going to be an impressive win. So that's my 2 cents on it. All right, let's talk about the defensive depth chart. So here we go. We got it up and going. And we'll do the same thing we did last time. We'll talk about the defensive line, switch it up. We'll do the Wolf, then we'll do the off-ball linebackers, and then we'll just kind of group the secondary in, kind of all together. Jimmy, we'll start with the defensive line. How do you feel about this group? I mean, the fact that you got Tim Keenan to come back, you got LT Overton to come back, you bring in a guy like Kelby Collins, who I've listed both as a bandit and as an interior defensive lineman. I typically only put guys in one spot, but I just feel like with Kelby Collins, it's such a unique situation. I wanted the depth chart, especially on the interior, to reflect what it looks like with him in that rotation, because I do think he's going to be a part of the interior rotation. But what do you think about this defensive line? Who's some guys who are standing out to you? Who are some guys they really need to come on and be good? Just what are your overall thoughts?
Yeah, I think the really unique part, and I think you highlighted well. I wouldn't not that you would not that you need it. I wouldn't change a thing there. I mean, to me that looks kind of right, especially the idea of listing Kelby in both spots, which makes sense because I think that's exactly what he did this spring. He was in the interior more than I think some initially projected, but based on Alabama's depth chart, it makes all the sense in the world. Then throw in the fact I think the guy's weighing about 285 right now, so he might just be a defensive tackle, and that's what he's grown into. But I love the starters. I mean, for all the, it's a constant drone of negativity out there about defensive line recruiting. And yet year after year, I point to it. And this is yet another example. If the defensive line recruiting is so bad, then how come Alabama's starting defensive line unit is basically as good as anybody's in the country? I mean, there might be other groups better than this. I'm not saying this is the best group. There might be other groups better or just as good, but there aren't many in the sense that Overton is a very possible first-round pick. I think Keenan is a solid day 2 pick myself, and I mean that as a compliment. James Smith could play his way into round 1. Now, he's more of the unknown based on we haven't seen him play as many snaps as we've seen Keenan and Overton, but I think every Alabama fan knows his ceiling is really high, and we're about to see the best James Smith we've seen yet. So I love the starters. They're great. Weirdly, I think Alabama's depth at bandit is pretty outstanding because I think Jordan Renaud is a guy that's probably ready to start. Now he can't because he's got Overton blocking him. And a guy we don't even talk about anymore, who really impressed me this spring, was Keon Keeley. I think he's sort of arriving. I wouldn't say he's arrived, but I think he's arriving, and to the point that I would predict we're going to see Keon Keeley play quite a few snaps with the ones this fall. I think he'll be out there quite a bit, and with Kelby playing outside and inside. So I love the depth at Bandit. The depth at the interior spots is where it's more alarming, just in the sense that Alabama hadn't had to depend on Edric Hill yet. Alabama hadn't had to depend on Jeremiah Beeman yet. Kelby Collins just got here and is growing into this big body he's got now. Steve Boomois is brand new and green as anyone should expect a player from French Canada to be, who spent 1 year in JUCO. We'd be crazy to expect a lot there, although I do think he's going to help. But the depth on the interior is a concern. But I love the starters, and the depth at Bandit is pretty fantastic.
I guess for the people who are listening and not watching, I'll go ahead and go over, because what you just laid out there, I think, is really interesting. So at defensive tackle, I have James Smith being backed up by Edric Hill. I also have Kelby Collins listed as a defensive tackle. And then Fonga, I have, listed there as well. Think, he might grow into being a nose, like with him and London Simmons. Yeah. I could really see them playing nose or defensive tackle. Like they kind of have more defensive tackle builds, but, I feel like their play style, they can be more of a penetrative style of nose tackle. Don't know that they have the mass to kind of do what Tim Keenan does, but I mean, who does? There's not many. But then I have at nose, I have Tim Keenan backed up by Jeremiah Beeman, backed up by Steve. What you pronounce it?
It's Boomois. I do know that.
Boomois.
Boomois. Yeah, it's actually easier than it looks.
Way easier. And I'm still going to say Mbamoa probably 37 times. But Boomois. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have had to say it that many times. But I got him being backed up by London Simmons. And then at Bandit, I have LT Overton with Jordan Renaud sitting as the number 2. I do technically on my depth chart projections, even though it's not reflected here, I have that as an or status with Kelby Collins, and then Keon Keeley kind of being another guy. Now, here's what I want to talk about. because you brought up Jordan Renaud and the fact that he's probably closer to being ready to be a starter, and Keon Keeley and your excitement about him taking a massive step forward. When you look at those two guys, Jimmy, I want people to think about something. Alabama could have gotten the same bandit combination that they had last season. They could have left Jamarian Latham there, let him stay the same size that he was, and they could have had him, LT Overton, with Jordan Renaud acting as a bandit 3, playing, just around 11 or 12 snaps a game. Instead, they move Latham. That he had to move to Wolf last year because of the injuries that they had, the losses that they had, the fact that once Deontay Lawson even went down as an off-ball linebacker, that didn't directly affect the Wolf, or he didn't play Wolf, but it prevented Jahad Campbell from being able to slide out there and man the Wolf spot because he had to be an every down off-ball linebacker. So that happened last season. They could have he didn't have time to lose a bunch of weight or anything, so he was playing at 278, 280, something like that. But then once the season ended, they announced that they were going to make that move permanent. And then it's like, okay, Kelby Collins, soon after that, it gets announced that he's going to be transferring to Alabama. It's like, boom, right there. He's probably going to be that bandit too, maybe working with Jordan Renaud, but they're both definitely going to be working behind LT Everton. And then what has happened? We're starting to think maybe Kelby Collins is exclusively an interior defensive lineman who only plays out there at bandits in very specific situations. If you're wanting to go with more of a heavy look, you want like a Justin Aboigbe heavy end in that 4-man front, maybe you put him out there. Maybe you get 2 bigger ends. We saw that at times last season where you would get Latham and LT Everton on the field at the same time. But, from everything that we understand, he seems to be trending more towards being an interior guy. Now, why is that the case? Probably because of Jordan Renaud and Keon Keeley. And granted, LT Overton, he was not really, he started a few games, 4 or 5 last year. He was not a full-time starter like people think, even though everyone would describe him as a full-time starter because he was playing pretty much as many snaps as Latham. And then at one point in the season, he started exceeding his snap count. But, so it could, in some people's mind, it's like, well, maybe they want a bigger workload on Overton. With the way that the defensive line rotates, I really don't think that's going to be the case. He's going to be the starter. He's going to get, that label for pretty much every single game, no doubt about it, outside of injury. But I think that they like Jordan Renaud. They wanted to create an opportunity for him to get a sizable role in this defense. And based off of how Keon Keeley is trending as well, it's like, hey, we need a guy who can fill that 11 or 12 snaps per game void because Jordan Renaud's being elevated. So you need that bandit 3. A guy like Keon Keeley can fill that, get his feet wet. And then when LT Overton leaves after this season, you've still got Jordan Renaud. You've still got Keon Keeley going into 2026, and Keeley's still got a couple of years of eligibility, even after this season. So I think that it speaks volumes to those 2 players specifically, how Alabama has handled that bandit position this offseason.
No, that makes all the sense in the world. And you bring in a Kelby Collins because why would you? I mean, a 280-pound type defensive lineman with his upside ceiling and experience and the fact he's from here, that's just one you can't turn away. And then once he gets here, you just see how he best fits in. Alabama's need for depth is in the interior. It's not at bandit. And whether it's a happy coincidence or not, again, I think Kelby's weighing about 285 right now. So, he might be more custom built for that defensive tackle spot. He's played more football than Edric Hill and Jeremiah Beeman have. I think Collins can be an important depth piece inside, playing quite a few snaps because you're obviously not going to stick big-bodied guys like Keenan and James Smith out there for 60-plus snaps. I mean, that you need to rotate there. And Collins just seems like an ideal guy, along with Edric Hill and Jeremiah Beeman, who, I'm very high on those guys. I think they're going to be really good players. They're just young. And whatever Boomaw gives you is just gravy, I think. Obviously, everybody's got to stay healthy, though. But overall, I like the group. For all the complaining about defensive line recruiting, you look at who's going to be playing on the field this fall, and you got to be really excited about that group.
You absolutely do. And, I have found it interesting. Keon Keeley's continued to get bigger. He's definitely like a big body guy. Now, granted, he doesn't have the strength of a guy. Like I think just even between him and Kelby Collins, it's like at this point similarly sized, but I don't think Keeley could hold up as an interior guy like Kelby Collins can. Renaud's continue to get bigger because he was kind of in that 260, 265 range, get him as big as possible. LT Overton's dropped a little bit of weight going from like 283 to 280. But, you know, like with this defensive line, I really like how they have guys who can be multiple. Like, you know, Overton can play out there on the edge in a 2-point stance, 3-point stance. I like, you know, what Renaud brings, but LT Overton, he can kick inside some. Probably don't want him doing that a ton, but he has that flexibility. If you go with maybe some 3-man fronts, he can certainly hold up in those looks. You've got a guy like James Smith who can play all along your defensive front, even fronts, odd fronts, you know, can play kind of the 4-eye, the 4, the 5, maybe even some. Probably at his best is a 3 technique, can play anywhere all the way down to maybe in situations being a 0 nose over the center. You know, Jeremiah Beeman can kind of do some similar things. Edric Hill, don't want him probably playing like a 0 technique nose, but he can do a lot as far as he can play a little bit further outside, has a little bit more twitch and explosiveness as a pass rusher. But it just, you know, sometimes they're going to want to go heavier where you got like the heavy ends out there on the edge where you can stop the run more effectively. You've got bandits who can do that. Kelby Collins can do that. Some Jordan Renaud is kind of a heavier guy that also provides a true edge presence. Keon Keeley can hold up a lot better as far as being out there on the edge. You know, it really is not a guy that you want playing on the interior. But so when you go heavier, you can use guys like that, LT Overton, but also you can kind of get a little bit smaller, maybe inside, a little bit more athletic. Really like this group, and I think it's a much better group than some people are giving them credit for. And I want to bring up now the Wolves because this plays into it some, because Tim Keenan's going to be a steady, solid player. On Twitter yesterday, not from a skill set perspective, even though they're run stopping bullies for the most part who have limitations as a pass rusher. But Tim Keenan to me feels kind of Dalvin Tomlinson-esque in the sense of doesn't really get the recognition from fans for being as good as he is. Now, is that going to lead to the NFL side of things like it did for Dalvin Tomlinson? I mean, I don't know that he's going to be that caliber of player on the next level, but I think he could be a day 2 guy similar to Dalvin Tomlinson, and I think he can play in the NFL for a very long time. But to me, what makes this what I would call defensive front potentially special is really Quay Russaw. It's James Smith, the 2 Carver former 5-star recruits, and it's LT Overton. Like, I think you've got 3 guys who have first-round potential. And a lot of people are like, man, you know, we really wish Alabama had South Carolina's defensive front from last year. Dylan Stewart's going to be a first-round pick, no doubt about it. I mean, he is a rare player. But Kyle Kennard, he was not a first-round pick. You know, their interior defensive linemen who were really good, neither one of those 2 guys were first-round picks. So, like, they had a very effective, disruptive defensive line, and you didn't have to have the premier NFL talent, like multiple of them. That's kind of, I'm not saying this is going to be South Carolina's defensive front because it plays differently. It has different responsibilities. The fact that Wolf's playing off the ball, on the ball, doing a lot of different things, it's not going to be the same thing. But I think that they have a lot of potential day 1 talents who, you know, if they didn't work out that way, I still think they're day 2 types of guys like Quay Russaw. I think bare minimum, I think he's got a lot more upside as a pass rusher if I'm speaking candidly, but bare minimum, he's a Ryan Anderson type. You know, he's a Courtney Upshaw type where he's going to probably go in the 2nd round or something. But he has a lot more upside where he could crawl into the 1st round. James Smith has 1st-round potential, can be very disruptive, very strong run stopper. And you've got LT Overton, who's got that 1st-round upside that we've all talked about. He's being projected to go in the 1st round. From a depth standpoint, still need to see some things be established, but I like where that's trending. But you're right. With this defensive front in general, very, very good group that can cause a lot of problems. And I'm personally, you know, Quay Russaw can handle the off-ball stuff at Wolf, but I hope, especially with Jihad Campbell, you not having that versatile chess piece, which we'll talk about more when we get to the off-ball linebackers, I'm hoping that Quay Russaw gets a lot more edge opportunities in 2025.
Yeah, I think just like I talked about, LT Overton has to step it up as a pass rusher, and he was so close to being good last year to be brutally honest, Quay Russaw wasn't as obviously talented as a pass rusher last fall. While he was physical, made plays, he was impressive for a guy playing in his first year of football coming off the redshirt year, but he didn't get after the passer, I think, like we would like to see. And I think that's been the challenge for him this offseason. And he has said so himself in interviews that I've got to get better as a pass rusher. And I've spent this offseason working on that. If both LT Overton and Quay Russaw make strides as pass rushers, this can be a really effective, dangerous front for Alabama. I love Quay as the everyday guy there because, again, a guy working on his pass rush who's already pretty good at setting the edge for a Wolf. This is a physical, mean dude. I like that Ryan Anderson and Courtney Upshaw comparison because I think that's what I remember those guys as is really edge setters, a physical presence. Maybe not guys that you expect to get 10 sacks, but Quay Russaw might be a better pass rusher than those guys. He's got to prove that. I think he can be, but I love Quay as the every down, the guy that you see first, second, and third down, at Wolf. And then off the bench, maybe when you want to get bigger, when you need to get bigger, now you've got Latham to use. When you want to get flashier, a guy, I know you have him last, and that's exactly where I would put him too on the depth chart right now. But I'm not going to be shocked if by late in the year, a 3rd and 10 Wolf isn't Justin Hill, who I think might be Alabama's most gifted flash guy off the edge. And he might be an interesting piece as the season moves along. But the depth here is really good. The starter, I'm a huge fan of, and Quay Russaw, who I think is just going to get better and better. And again, I like how they can mix and match based on situation, whether you need a bigger guy, whether you need a pass rusher. Alabama's got that at Wolf.
Latham is so interesting to me because I understand why they made the move. And that's why I look at him and I say, I liked him as a bandit. I think he was kind of an underrated piece for Alabama that fans really didn't give enough credit. Like a lot of people were kind of upset that he returned, and that just, to me, I was like, and normally the reason that they're upset is because they feel like he's going to be standing in the way of somebody else that they want on the field.
Right. A guy that they haven't seen play that they were assuming is good.
Right. Keon Keeley, at the time when he first announced his return, I don't think we knew that he was going to be playing exclusively Wolf. Like that was going to be a permanent move. So a lot of people thought, okay, now if Overton comes back, you got Overton, you got Latham, you got Renaud. Keon Keeley's never going to get on the field. So there was some frustration there. They want to see the older, kind of not limited, but like what you're getting guy move on so they can see the young flashier player. And it's like I think he's a really good player. Now here's the thing. I think he's going to do just fine at Wolf, but I really liked him at Bandit. And by making him lose weight, allowing him to lose weight by moving positions, he was a guy who I always thought did pretty well on the interior. And the fact that we've talked about maybe needing some guys on the interior, some more help there, and Kilby Collins certainly fills that void to an extent, but it would have been nice if a guy like Latham could continue to do that as well, because there were times in like that cheetah package, he was the lone, defensive lineman with those 3 pass rushers. And, he was lining up as like a 1 tech or a 3 tech and kind of getting after. It's like situationally, I just thought that could have been valuable. Now him being at 250, 255 like they're planning, like can he still do that? Probably not. I think that changes things. But I also don't know, like he's a better pass rusher than people realize.
Yeah, he is.
And we'll see like how much dropping 20 pounds helps on that front as far as being more of an edge guy. And he actually, from understanding what to do and the responsibilities of the Wolf, I think he actually did a pretty good job last year. I was very impressed considering he was pretty much 280 pounds, how fluid he was handling some of that off ball, some of those off ball responsibilities. But Russaw, to me, I think this guy's got game wrecking ability. Yeah. I was going back and kind of, I'm with you. Like I see the edge setter. I viewed him more as a run-stopping style of Wolf who's very comfortable playing off the ball. He had some experience doing that in high school, and we had wondered if he was going to end up off the ball or on the ball. But with him, man, it feels like, as I've gone back and watched, he can turn the corner on you. He's got some explosiveness. He's got some twitch. I searched his name and tweets that I made throughout the season when someone else brought up, some of his plays or whatever. And just some of the things that I saw, it was more so pointing. It was like a Malachi Moore interception against Tennessee. And the play was really to highlight, Malachi Moore. But it was, Quay Russaw was a guy that I mentioned in the tweet as well, because he did turn the corner. If the running back doesn't hold him, he probably gets a sack there. But it created just enough time for the quarterback to escape the pocket and then throw an interception right to Malachi Moore. It perfectly represented what Kane Wommack's defense is supposed to be, which is pressures to turnovers. Let that vision-oriented style of defense kind of take over, let your safeties go make plays. But I think he's, losing 10 pounds. I just think he's going to be that much better. I would love to see him playing on the ball a little bit more. But a guy like Justin Hill, he's the guy who I think can be Jihad Campbell, like with that versatility, but it will work the other way. Like when you're playing that Wolf position, a lot of times when they're playing off the ball, they're still a defensive lineman. They might have some pass coverage responsibilities. They drop into a zone or something, but they can do that as a 3-4 outside linebacker as well. So really no difference. For a guy like Justin Hill, though, you could play him. Like when Dallas Turner made the move against Mississippi State a couple of years ago to off ball and played not exclusively, but about a huge chunk of his snaps as a true off ball linebacker. Justin Hill can do that. And that's what Jihad Campbell was, but it would just work the other way. He went from being an off ball guy to being a situational edge. I think Justin Hill can be a very versatile piece where he's mostly an edge, but then he plays off the ball, and you can do more with him as an off ball player, where you actually have him kind of playing as a third true linebacker. You can get really creative and have some fun, which is why I really think he's going to be a really good player in this defense. But overall, Yanze Pierre, situational pass rusher right now. We'll see how he's continuing to grow and develop. Can he handle 3-down responsibilities? We'll have to wait and see, but I really like this Wolf group. I really like Quay Russaw. I'm doing the player rankings. He's going to be making a climb quite a bit. Don't know that he's going to crack my top 10, but if he's not in there, he's going to be right outside of it. So Noah Carter's one that I do want to mention as well, because I've gone back and watched some of his high school stuff recently, and just that guy can play. He can get after the quarterback. So really like this group. Anything to add about the defensive front before we move to the second level?
No. I just, I think what stands out to me, the starters at all the spots are great. The depth at Bandit, the depth at Wolf is great. If you're like, no, there's got to be question marks. Okay, there is, and it's the depth in the interior of the defensive line. There's your question marks, and I think Tim Keenan becomes maybe not the best, far from the best, frankly, but maybe the most valuable player to the defense is Tim Keenan, because you lose Keenan, you don't really have a replacement for him. I mean, Overton's a great player. Quay Russaw, I think, is going to be great. You lose them, knock on wood, you don't. But if you do, you got guys. I mean, Jordan Renaud would be fine. I think even Yanze Pierre will be fine, I think, at Wolf. I mean, you got guys there. Lose Keenan, it might get a little rough.
The reason that you're 100% correct, Jeremiah Beeman can handle some of that. You'd have one, and you wouldn't have the road. I mean, you talking about having to rely on JUCO guys or true freshmen. I mean, Edric Hill being 278 pounds, he's not going to be handling those types of responsibilities. What you would have to do is really, and granted, you'd be in trouble against certain offenses, but you'd have to do a lot of double 3 tech, and you'd have to probably be double mugging those linebackers, putting them in the A gaps, which can kind of prevent or discourage the inside the A gap runs, and then having them bail out and do all that, which you're going to see some of that anyways. I'm just saying you probably have to do it a lot more, and against some offenses where you really don't want to be doing that. So you're 100% correct. Tim Keenan is very, very important to Alabama's defense in 2025. All right, let's move on to the off-ball linebackers, and this is pretty interesting. One of the things that I wanted to talk about with this group, because in my head, when I think about the Mike linebacker and I think about the stinger or the weak side linebacker, my mind, when I first started getting into football, it goes back to that 2005 Alabama defense where you had Jawan Simpson, formerly known as Jawan Garth, as a weak side linebacker. You had Freddie Roach as your middle linebacker, and you had D'Amico Ryans as your strong side guy. And Jawan Simpson was 6'3". He was about 220, 222 pounds. I remember his backup, DeMarcus Waldrop, was like 6'1", 190.
Smaller. Yeah, even smaller.
Very lean. But that was kind of that will linebacker, like D'Amico Ryan, 6'2", 232, 235 pounds. Obviously, Freddie Roach was massive. He was close to 250 pounds. But the differences between like your strong side guy versus your weak side was like the cleanup player. He's the athlete. He's the space guy. He didn't need to be as big because a lot of times runs were going to the strong side and he would have to be a cleanup player, needed that speed and athleticism. In Alabama's defense, the way that it operates, your Mike needs to be more of your space player because the stinger is going to be playing to the boundary side, the short side of the field. The Mike is going to be playing to the wide side of the field, so he's got to cover more space in coverage. So that is something that when it first happened, the switch, and really, you know, Alabama and Nick Saban kind of did a lot of this as well, and it confused the mess out of me for a while. I couldn't figure out, okay, he's listed as a Mike, but he's playing on the weak side. Took me a while to figure out what they were doing, to be quite honest with you. But like last year, Jahad Campbell was the better athlete between the two with him and Deontay Lawson. So he was the space Mike player. Even though Deontay Lawson was kind of the green dot guy, he was the green dot guy as the stinger, which means he's playing to the short side of the field. I mean, really both guys were 3-down guys, good in coverage. Alabama had a really strong combination with 3-down guys last season. But this year, you look at that, and so I want people to understand now Deontay Lawson, I have him going to that Mike because I think he's a much better athlete than Nakai Hill-Green, who I currently have as the starting stinger. So he's more of a thumper. Not terrible in coverage, not a huge liability in that area, but I wouldn't say it was a strength of his. And I have him currently. Now, a lot is going to depend on the health of Deontay Lawson. And can he handle 3-down responsibilities? Is he going to be a guy who's going to be playing that many snaps? Do they ease him into it? I could see him platooning early in the season and then it becoming a platoon at the other spot once he's ready to kind of become that guy again. And I really like the combination of having Nakai Hill-Green as kind of more of an early down guy. And then if it's kind of like last year, but except for when instead of moving Jahad Campbell to a pass rusher, like moving that other linebacker to just a different spot on the field, you just take that guy off the field and then you put Justin Jefferson, who's more of a coverage guy, out there and kind of platoon him that way. What do you think about this off-ball linebacker group? Do you have any concerns with it? Do you love the depth? Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I sort of place them into two groups personnel-wise. There's a 3-man group and a 5-man group, and the 3-man group are the guys that I think, assuming good health, and that's assuming a lot because Deontay's coming off a serious injury, but assuming good health, you've got to assume that Deontay Lawson, Nakai Hill-Green, and Justin Jefferson are going to play the vast majority of snaps with the ones inside. And I think because of Lawson's knee injury and because Kane Wommack likes to play a lot of guys, I think it's fortunate that Alabama's got 3, that they went and got Hill-Green out of the transfer portal, because I think you need 3 experienced guys. And I love those 3. I think all 3 are why Alabama is going to be a good defense this fall is those 3 guys on the interior at off-ball linebacker. I think they're all 3 really good football players. Physical, they can run, they're versatile, they're interchangeable. Obviously, Deontay's the most valuable as your green dot guy, but it's not like Hill-Green in his 6th year of playing off-ball linebacker can't be a green dot guy. Justin Jefferson will be in his 5th year of playing college football at some level or another. So I love the age, the maturity, the skill level there. The problem is with the second group in the sense that the other 5 are all talented, but highly inexperienced to zero experience. And you hope you're not put into a situation where all of a sudden you're dependent on those guys. But I think a battle away from what most of the media is going to pay attention to, kind of I guess you'd call it an off-Broadway battle here, is going to be for that 4th spot. I mean, and because I think really, seriously, I think any of the 5 could win it. I think that's a fascinating off-Broadway position battle for the 4th inside linebacker spot. And by the way, I'm not anticipating that guy playing a lot of snaps, but it will be interesting between Caden Jones, QB Reese, Abdul Sanders, Luke Metz, and Duke Johnson. it'll be very interesting to see which one of those 5 becomes the quote 4th guy, because the 4th guy is going to play some this year. We'll see the 4th guy, and definitely in garbage time, of course, you'll see that guy. But hey, a big story for 2026 is going to be Hill Green, Deontay Lawson, and Justin Jefferson are all leaving at once. And then all you're left with is this group of 5, which one of those guys is going to step up and make you feel better about off-ball linebacker in spring of 2026? Now, it's not the biggest issue in front of us today, but I assure you, when hopefully me and you are doing some shows here, as soon as the 2025 season is over, this may be the number one topic is, oh my gosh, you lost all of your inside linebacker group.
Sincere Johnson, come on down. No, I mean,
it is.
There would be an opportunity. There's no doubt. And I agree with everything you just said. I love the experience. I mean, when you're talking about, a grad player, a couple of 5th-year seniors as the 3 that you're planning to rotate, they've played quite a bit of football. Like Justin Jefferson, I understand last year was his first major action on this level, but he also was a JUCO guy. So he's got some college experience there. Deontay Lawson's played a lot of football. Nikhai Hill-Green has played a lot of football in a lot of different places. But that linebacker 4 is the one I'm most interested in because so this is how I have it for those listening. I have Nikhai Hill-Green being backed up at the stinger spot by Justin Jefferson, and then I have QB Reese behind him and Luke Metz as the 4th guy. I have Deontay Lawson as the starting Mike with Caden Jones listed behind him, with Abdul Sanders behind him, and then Duke Johnson. Here's the thing. So if you're looking at that, you would say, okay, Clint has Caden Jones as that linebacker 4, which, by the way, I would still say he's probably the favorite.
Yeah.
And I will say, I've mentioned this before. I'll mention it again. Someone posted a lot of the A-Day game on YouTube. I'm not going to direct people to that spot, but they did. I've gone back and watched it. It's tough to see, but I have dove in. I want to be accurate when I do depth chart projections. And I looked at these 2 spots in particular and where guys were lining up as far as boundary compared to field. And granted, you got guys like Caden Jones who are doing both. QB Reese, I saw him playing both. I mean, a lot of these guys can. Most can. I would say that you probably don't want Nikhai Hill-Green as your space player. He's probably going to be like a stinger only, boundary only option, but really any of these other guys can kind of do both. Now you've got guys who's like, this guy's clearly an athlete. He's clearly a space player. Justin Jefferson, in an ideal situation, he'd probably be your Mike. A guy like Duke Johnson, who a lot of people thought, is he going to play defensive back? Is he going to play linebacker? Probably want him playing in space. You don't want him banging between the tackles quite as much as that. You're taking away something a little bit when you've got him playing to the boundary side, I guess is the way to put it. But QB Reese is the one I'm probably – now, granted, Abdul Sanders, I'm a huge fan. I liked all 3 of these freshmen that they signed. I'd say Sincere Johnson. And he would have a clear opportunity, and I love that guy. I hope Alabama can figure out a way to get that done. But when you look at the 3 freshmen that they signed, none of them were super highly touted, highly ranked. I mean, Duke Johnson at one point, but he ended up falling in the rankings right there at the end, ended up being, I want to say, maybe 150-ish. It's not bad by any means, but just not a top 100 guy like he was previously. But I think all 3 are good players. Abdul Sanders generated probably the most buzz, but Duke Johnson was kind of the first freshman out there on A-Day, and that kind of threw me for a loop. But QB Reese, when you look at him, he looks like he'd be a Mike because of his size. He looks like he'd be a space player, but he plays more like he's not a thumper. I think he plays physical. And I think he's got the size kind of match the physicality that he likes to play with more so this year than he was last year. And he'll continue to get bigger and stronger. And every year he can end up being one of those guys especially down the road, because as he gets bigger and stronger, he's going to start to look how he plays. But right now, I think he's probably the biggest challenger, but you're 100% correct. All of those guys could end up challenging. You got to get better run fits, Jimmy. Last year, a lot of people blamed it on the defensive front. To me, it was really, and it was the defensive front at times, but it was the second level. It seemed like for some odd reason, okay, so that shallow, when the Wolf lines up as an off-ball linebacker, you got a 3-man front. That Wolf typically is going to be lining up, let's say, in the B gap, in a shallow B gap, and then he's going to jump to the outside at the snap. He's still going to be an edge type of player, but it's kind of the throw, and sometimes he won't be, sometimes he'll be a B gap guy, whatever. But it seems like when the off-ball linebacker to his side had the B gap and he would jump to the outside, that off-ball linebacker really struggled. It was like it would throw them for a loop with a guy being lined up in their spot and then jump and then I mean, defensive linemen, they do twists and stunts and nobody's got none. I mean, it was almost like there was some confusion there. I don't know what it was, but it caused problems at times. Nikhai Hill-Green really fills that void. He is very, very good at run fits and understanding them, being in the right spot consistently in the run game. I really like that about him. They've got to get better second level play as far as that side of it. You got to be able to stop the run, earn the right to get after the quarterback, and then you can get the sacks and the turnovers and everything else.
Yeah, there was times last year I felt like in the run game, the inside runs, I think with Jahad Campbell, some of it was, we got to remember, Jahad Campbell didn't fall out of the womb playing off-ball linebacker. Alabama sort of made him into one. And I'm not necessarily sure Jahad is an instinctive, natural player at that spot. He's just doing it all on unbelievable athleticism, which is why he's a first-round pick in the draft. But I don't think he's just this natural guy for the spot. I think sometimes he would miss a gap or miss his guy or misread a key because that's just not his natural spot. That is Lawson's natural spot. He played there a ton at Mobile Christian. He's only been at this position at Alabama. I think with Lawson, when he missed gaps or would attack the wrong gap and the running back would take off through and Lawson would just miss him, I'm guessing that had a lot to do with the transition, the change in defense, the change in terminology, the change in assignments. I think it's understandable that an off-ball linebacker wouldn't always bat 1,000 with his assignment in an all-new defense, especially early in the season. So I agree that there were bad run fits at times with that group that you wouldn't really expect with great players like Lawson and Campbell or even Justin Jefferson. But I ascribe them for different reasons. Campbell just not being super instinctive and Lawson just sort of struggling with the transition at times. But it doesn't change this fact. Deontay Lawson's a great football player. And if Alabama has any success this fall, it's going to be in large part on Deontay's shoulders. He's a great player, and I don't think we'll see as much of that this spring, in part because, like we both pointed out, Lawson, fifth-year guy, Justin Jefferson, fifth-year guy, Nikhai Hill-Green, sixth-year guy. I mean, who else has that level of experience? Lawson and Hill-Green have both been all-conference players in their time, too.
Yeah, and Deontay Lawson, man, my big concern is I saw a picture of him this offseason.
Yeah.
And I probably should pull it up, but I don't know. I remember exactly who posted it. He posted it with a fan, and he looked real thin. Like, I mean, I
knew what you were going to say before you. It's so noticeable. I knew what you were going to say before you said it. And me and you have never talked about it either.
We haven't. No, we have not.
And right before you said, I'm like, Deontay looks thin, and I'm assuming it's not being able to work out because of the knee.
And is it camera angle? Like, I would like to find his camera angles if he's got the right ones figured out.
I saw him up close just in Coach's shirt at the captain's thing at Denny Chimes. So I was pretty close to him, and everyone in our group pointed it out. Like, thought Lawson's bigger than that, and I'm like, I've seen Lawson bigger than that. so it's noticeable. I would guess the Lawson. I mean, I'm not ready to work at a carnival in terms of guessing weights. Though I've been looking at football players for a long time. The Lawson I saw at Denny Chimes on A-Day, I would say was 220.
Yeah. Hey, I want to say at one time his recruiting profile had him listed at 217, like 6'2", 217. He looked 217 to me. So that's right around what you're talking about. He was 239 this past season. That was one of the big things. It's like, okay, if we're going to be playing a little bit lighter boxes, a lot of 4-2-5 where that's kind of your base, it's like probably need to get all of it. You saw the defensive line get bigger kind of across the board. You saw the second level, like Jahad Campbell went from being a guy who was 230 pounds, his before last season to 244. You saw Deontay Lawson going from like 228 to 239. And he looked, and granted, that might be extremely concerning for fans. I get it. I'm also somewhat concerned by that. But sometimes when these guys are focusing on rehab and all that, they, might lose a little bit of muscle mass, but when they really start getting back in the weight room and stuff, they can kind of put it back on. So we'll see what he looks like come the season. Wouldn't be shocked at all if he played quite a bit lighter, because I don't know if he is down there in the 220 range. I don't know that he's adding 20 pounds in a few months, but he probably will get a lot closer to that 230.
Yeah, maybe it helps that he's been that big before. I mean, I'm no David Ballou, so I can't speak scientifically about it, but maybe the fact that he's been that big before helps you gain it back quicker, easier. But there's no doubt he's got to gain some weight back. But like you said, maybe some of this might be a little bit by design.
Yeah, and I mean, you were 100% right with the assignments too. There was a couple of times I was going back and watching his tape from last year. Been doing that a lot recently, and man, it's crazy how my opinions really start to change. Maybe you perceive guys certain ways, and you kind of watch it all live, and then you go back and watch the tape, and it just going back and watching specifically him. He's a damn good football player. First of all, a really good football player. But got to be better as far as reading his keys and doing his job, because there was a couple of times I'm like, well, I don't know what you're looking at, but that wasn't the play.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to the final group, the secondary, and let's talk about, 5 different positions, really good group. So what I've got, Jimmy, is cornerback 1. I have Damani Jackson backed up by Dijon Lee, backed up by Red Morgan at the cornerback 2 spot, which is really at this point probably 1A, 1B. But I have Zabian Brown backed up by Cam Calhoun, backed up by Chuck McDonald. And then at Husky, I have Deshaun Jones backed up by Dre Kirkpatrick. At free safety, I have Bray Hubbard backed up by Ivan Taylor, the true freshman. And then at strong safety, I have Keon Sabb backed up by Zay Mincy. And then Cam Howard sitting behind both of those 2 guys. So what do you think about this secondary? Obviously it's probably going to be a strength of the team, right?
Yeah, showing that we definitely share a brain. That's exactly how I would line them up. I wouldn't line them up any other way, doing the same exercise. I think it is a major strength of the team. I think it's one of the best secondaries in the country. It's crazy to me that Alabama 2 years ago could feature NFL prospects like Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid, and then you just go forward just 1 year without them. Now you're in your second year. I'm not so sure Damani and Zabian aren't just as good, which is one heck of a compliment. But y'all watch where Damani and Zabian go when it's time for them to go in the draft. Zabian's obviously a couple years out, but I think the NFL is going to love Damani. I love the starters at all the spots. If there's a questionable starter, and I use that term lightly, I'm not 100% sure that I would bet everything I've got that Deshaun Jones will be the starter all year at Husky, though I think so. That would be my guess, but I do think he's one that is probably going to split some reps there quite a bit, because I think Dre Kirkpatrick is such an instinctive football player that sort of might be ideally built for that position in this defense. And I was just super impressed by what I saw of Dre Kirkpatrick this spring, and I think he might play more than people believe at Husky. Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb are excellent safeties. Zay Mincy, I'd kind of consider him a co-starter. As good as Bray and Keon are, it's just going to be impossible to keep Zay Mincy off the field. So the defensive back group is the best on the defense in terms of high quality starters with 2s that are ready to play. The only 2 might not be quite ready as Ivan Taylor, who could end up being the best of all the 2s by the end of the year. Because I think Ivan's going to be great. But man, the secondary groups 1 and groups 2, the 1s and the 2s, fantastic recruiting, fantastic coaching. Mo Linguist deserves a lot of credit here, but there's just NFL players everywhere on that secondary.
There really is. And one thing about Ivan Taylor, and I've talked to multiple people, some I want to say on video, others behind the scenes, but anybody that went to some of these practices, and I'm not just talking about people who saw portions like media, like me. I'm talking about people who were there for the entire practice, saw everything. They have all said, Ivan Taylor makes some plays, man. That guy can ball. And that just has made me, that's why I feel very confident. Now, granted, Cam Howard kind of plays more like a strong safety anyways, kind of a boundary guy. The strong safety is going to be lining up to the boundary. Free is going to be playing to the field side. I call it a free safety. Some people might even call it a field safety. Like that FS stands for field. you can do that either way. But granted, I mean, they're kind of interchangeable at times. I mean, there's going to be times where motion and stuff's going to cause, it's going to cause the free safety to kind of have to roll up. It's going to cause the strong safety to move back and play that single high. You're going to get split safety looks. Granted, we got more coverage, like more coverages than I was expecting. A lot of cover 3 at South Alabama. Now, granted, that was probably out of necessity. You got to get really in one. A lot of cover 1 man, but a little bit of a variety, and I would like to see that continue. But yeah, I'm right there with you as far as the depth and stuff. And when you said that about Dre Kirkpatrick, first of all, one of the things that I love about his emergence is it's allowed Red Morgan to stay on the perimeter. It's possible that he goes back to Husky, but once again, going back and watching guys, he got bullied at times last year.
Yeah.
The lack of size and lack of strength, he got bullied inside. And so this really helps him. Now, granted, he might not be the best athlete, as far as being a perimeter corner. But, I just think that it's better to be a limited athlete out there than not have the size and physicality to hold up as a Husky. That can really hurt you in some situations. Now, with Drake Kirkpatrick, I've heard great things about him. I do think that he's got a Husky skill set, and he's been another guy who's just made a lot of plays in the spring. When I think of him, though, my mind immediately goes to, 5'10". I remember a 5'10" Husky in King Mack against Tennessee, and when he was getting in some of those man situations, Josh Heupel's really good at identifying the matchup and picking on guys. And, I just, that's the only thing I worry about. Deshaun Jones, not only is he 6 foot, a couple inches taller, but he's got a lot more length. He's got pretty long arms. I would say he's more of like a 6'1", 6'2", length type of player. That is the only thing I worry about. If that is not a problem, and it could be a problem at times, but it's something that you live with, and you just say, okay, what he provides far exceeds the limitations that he has in man coverage in those situations, and you find a way to mask it or whatever. But that would probably be one of the biggest question marks I have about him. But I'm a huge fan of how he's developing. He's one of those guys that kind of proves you're getting the star power. You're bringing in the 5 stars, the Dijon Lees, the Xavier Browns. You're getting development out of them. They're ready to go. Brown last year. Jalen Mbakwe contributed as a 5-star last year. Dijon Lee looks like a guy who's going to contribute this year. Damani Jackson being a transfer guy. Keon Sabb being a transfer guy. Bring them in. They kind of do exactly what you expected them to do. Deshaun Jones being kind of a late transfer ad. He provided exactly what he needed to on the perimeter and ended up being a very valuable Husky number 2. And then you got the guys like Drake Kirkpatrick, who were lower rated players who were getting developed extremely well. And you got to feel good about that. Zay Mincy's another one there at safety. I really like this secondary. And when you were talking about you weren't sure if Deshaun Jones was going to be the Husky all year, that could be Dre, but it could also be Zay Mincy. It could also be Dijon Lee. They could be trying to figure out a way to get some of these other guys. Deshaun Jones' competition goes far beyond just Drake Kirkpatrick, because there's a third safety that really deserves to be on the field, and there's probably at least a third corner in Dijon Lee, if not a fourth with Cam Calhoun, that deserves some playing time as well. So they might try to get creative in how they use some of those guys.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say about the DBs, I know this is a really bold thing to say, but I just can't help myself, because this is honestly how I feel, and hopefully this is proven right. There's been a string of incredible cornerbacks at Alabama throughout the Saban era to present, just a string of incredible first-round picks and high-level NFL players. The best of the bunch to this point has been Patrick Surtain, who's now the best cornerback on this earth per the NFL. So I'm not going to say better than Surtain, because that's ridiculous, because Surtain is literally, as we talk today, the best cornerback on this earth. But Dijon Lee, I think, has a chance to be the second best cornerback of this era, surpassed only by Surtain. And I fully realize what I'm saying when I say that, but that's how good I think this freak can be. He was extremely impressive this spring for a true freshman. He has jaw-dropping size, and I'm not talking about fans dropping their jaws. I'm talking about coaches dropping their jaws that he can play
NFL
that position.
evaluators.
Yeah, that he can play this position at that size that well. And it's as good as Damani is, who I think could be a first-round pick, and Zabian Brown, who I think is a future first-round pick. Good luck keeping Dijon off the field. I mean, he's absolutely great. And the comping him to Surtain is sort of ridiculous because of how good Surtain is. They're also not even the same size, even though Surtain is a big cornerback, but he ain't as big as Lee is. I just think the future is extremely bright there.
One of the things that really stood out to me in the A-Day practice was how much Dijon Lee competes at the catch point. Like he understands his size, he understands his movement. First of all, it almost seems like at times quarterbacks they feel like they can get some stuff on him because of they assume with his size like there's a lack of mobility. Now, granted, film study is gonna, but it's like you see him out there and he covers a lot of ground, and he just as far as like the agility to being able to stop and start, change directions, caught all of that stuff, just very impressive dude. But I mean, when you've got a player who will compete at the catch point like this guy, he can go against, I mean, I'm not saying he can go against the Mike Evans of the world, and he's going to go out there. He's going to be physical enough to hold up. He's going to compete at the catch point. And granted, a guy like Isaiah Horton, we saw some practice highlights that Alabama posted where he's competing at the catch point too, and he's outdoing, Dijon Lee. So I'm not saying he can't lose the catch point, but just there was a couple of plays where I'm like, this guy's competing his ass off out there, and just with his raw natural ability, he's a special player. Year 2, Zabian Brown's going to be better than year 1 Zabian Brown. Damani Jackson's going to be a lot more comfortable. He was already a really good player last year. I think he continues to make strides in the right direction. Bray Hubbard's going to be comfortable as a full-time starter, spending the entire offseason as a starter, has a lot of playmaking ability. Keon Sabb's going to be back, but you also got Zay Mincy, who's going to be better in year 2, know what's going on, has gotten his feet wet as far as playing experience. Deshaun Jones has got a lot of experience at both Wake Forest and now at Alabama, and just a lot of depth and guys who are ready. I mean, Cam Calhoun, a lot of people feel like he's got an NFL future. He could end up being Alabama's cornerback 4. Go out there and find me a better cornerback 4 in college football, folks. You're not going to do it. And that doesn't matter if it's Dijon Lee, who's cornerback 4, or Cam Calhoun. Does not matter. Go find me one better. You will not. So, in this vision-oriented defense, and we're expecting the pass rush to be pretty good, I mean, it could potentially be a lethal combination. I would like to see the pass rush. That's more of the question mark or the unknown, but we're expecting improvement. Think they got some dudes up front, but we know for a fact they got a plethora of guys in the back end who can take advantage of any opportunities that they're given. It's not just going to be one guy. You're not going to be able to look as a quarterback and say, hey, need to avoid this cat, but we got this guy we can pick on. I think at all 5 spots, they got dudes, and it runs pretty deep. And I think if Drake Kirkpatrick's out there, you might see a matchup that you like if you're Tennessee. Like, I'm not saying there aren't situations where you won't feel good, but you're not going into any game saying this is the guy we're going to pick on in Alabama's secondary, and we should be able to find consistent success. And when you start your defense off that way, that really can mask some other limitations. Got to stop the run, but I think that Alabama's got a good blend of physicality, size, length, versatility, and depth. And so I really like this group overall. Jimmy, you got anything else before we hop out of here?
I just think all the pieces are in place for the defense to be great. If they're not, I'm going to have a hard time explaining it. I mean, personnel wise, this should be a really good defense, and they were playing really well at the end of last season. If they do it all year long, like they were doing at the end of last season, I think this defense is going to, be right where we want it to be. And Kane Wommack could even potentially use this defense that he's put together, and he's going to coordinate as a springboard to a head coaching job somewhere out there, because I think that's the next step for him, is a head coach at a big place, and it might be this defense that vaults him into that.
A question I have for fans, get in the comments and let me know, just because of my curiosity. Jimmy, if you want to answer, feel free, but don't feel like you have to. When is the last time you felt this good about Alabama's defensive coordinator? When is the Pete Golding was a guy who wasn't very popular in Tuscaloosa. Kevin Steele, I mean, granted, a lot of people liked, I think it wasn't Pete Golding, so a lot of people were just happy about that. Thought he can bring some of that edge back to Alabama's defense a little bit, and I thought he did a pretty good job. But I mean, when is the last time you felt this good? I'm not saying it's Jeremy Pruitt, but that might be the answer for a lot of people.
It's going to be the most common answer in the comments to your question. I think the most common answer will be Jeremy Pruitt. And as much as I don't like the overboard, the assuming too much, the going overboard stuff, it is a fact that last year's defense gave up the fewest points and the fewest yards at Alabama since 2017. And this group should be better than they were. And it's year two, so there's no transition. So if it is the best defense on the field since before 2017, that's Jeremy Pruitt's defenses. So I don't think Pruitt's a wrong answer here, and I think it'll be the most common one you see.
That's kind of, I mean, that's close to a decade, folks. So.
Although I do think that fans are a little hard on a couple of those guys, particularly, I mean, Pete Golding is considered a real high-quality coach at Ole Miss and around the country, by the way, in terms of what he does. And, of course, Tosh Lupoy is a defensive coordinator at a top-5 program right now, at a program that's really got it going on. He's clearly capable, clearly. But, Jeremy Pruitt's the best defensive coordinator I've ever seen myself at Alabama. And the fact that we're comparing Kane Wommack to that is fun.
Appreciate you as always, Jimmy. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll definitely have to hop on here and do this again soon.
Can't wait, man.
To Pearl River Resort.